Can you hear me?
Yep. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Of course.
All right.
You. Yeah.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah. How you doing today?
Back to back. It's one of those days. But
When I know it. I'm living a dream right now, so trust me, I know
you and me
it.
both. You and me both. I'm looking forward to this though. This is one that I've been kind of, you got things you have to do and things that you want to do. This is definitely the second category.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
This is an opportunity. I told Belinda earlier. I'm so grateful that you guys took the time out to even reconsider me. I always kick myself. Me and Raul talk about this often.
Mm-hmm.
The day that I met you guys was until that date, was one of the worst days. When I met you guys, it was literally an hour and a half after the city of Baltimore had stiffed me after months and months of working with them and wasting time. And the thing that made the difference was you guys asked me, why did I walk out of the mayor's event?
I remember that. I remember that.
I was honest, that we were just fed up. They didn't really want to help save lives. They didn't really want to change anything, or we didn't know how to persuade them or for us to help.
Right.
And then you guys asked me why, and it was with such concern. That's what made me. It wasn't Amazon or AWS that made me want to come over, because that's a lot to ingest at that period where I was. Well, what is Amazon going to do with me, right? Why do I want that? So that wasn't the factor. The factor that made me say yes was because you guys cared. Like you really cared about why I left. And in my mind, all I thought is, why they asked me, why does it matter to them why I left? Now I understand the entire mission, and I've been beneficial from it. I truly understand what you guys are doing is great. You don't know the impact that it has on a non-technical entrepreneur that everybody thinks doesn't have whatever it is to make it.
Right. Well, you know what? I see. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, but I see people are trickling in, so I don't want you to give it away too soon.
Okay.
Because, and this is why I've been so much looking forward to this conversation, is because we have a history and we know each other. And we were talking earlier, this will just be like a conversation between friends. So I'll give the rest of the folks a chance to, wrap up from the other session and migrate into this session. I've been using the word migrate a lot now that we're talking about the cloud. We'll give them a chance to migrate into our session, and then we'll take it from the top.
Okay, so I'll wait for you to start, and then I'll cue in.
Yeah, we'll just give it another minute or two. It looks like it's 1:03. Wow, we've got quite a few people in here. So, all right, well, why don't I go ahead and kick it off? So for those of you who are joining, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your event, a part of your day. As you know by now, this is the Baltimore Innovation Week, and we're proud to sponsor the Innovation Celebration 2020. My name is Michael Jackson, affectionately known as MJ, and I am with AWS, or Amazon Web Services, working on my 5th year now, and we are proud sponsors of this event. For those who don't know, Amazon Web Services is a wholly owned subsidiary of Amazon.com. In 2006, we launched AWS, Amazon Web Services, and we were essentially the creators of what is known today as cloud computing. And that's defined as the on-demand delivery of IT resources via the internet. All right, so since then, I know today has been focused a lot on current events, from COVID, social injustice. How can technology and innovation powered by local innovators, founders right from within our city borders, work to, leverage innovation to address some of these challenges? I personally work within Amazon Web Services in our public sector team. We empower and collaborate with governments and educational institutions. In fact, around the world, 6,500 government agencies rely on AWS. And within the public sector business, I lead 2 of our industry verticals, US elections and public health. And so that's pretty much me in a nutshell. I can't wait to get started with this conversation. Just a little bit of background history on a personal note. I also am from Baltimore, born and raised, graduated from Baltimore City Public Schools, graduated from the University of Baltimore. So I'm also on the board of the ETC, working closely with Deb Tillett and others. And so I'm really excited when my two worlds collide, right? I get to represent AWS, represent ETC, represent Baltimore, and spend time with such a talented entrepreneur, a founder such as Trevor. So now I'm going to turn it over to you, Trevor, ask you to introduce yourself. And also, for those who don't know, Trevor and his startup were graduates of an earlier cohort of ETC, which is amazing. It kind of brings it all full circle. So with that, I'll ask you to do an introduction of yourself, your story, and then we'll jump right in. We'll have a good time for the next 45, 50 minutes.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thanks, MJ.
Absolutely.
Hello, everyone. My name is Trevor Brooks. I'm the founder of Homesafe First in Gun Bale, or technically World Safe First, as we have multiple products now. And we're part of AWS Cloud Start and AWS Lighthouse, and part of alumni of the ETC and Accelerate Baltimore. And we're happy to be here and being showcased.
Awesome. That's great. So let's talk a little bit, Trevor. We were giving them a little teaser as folks were trickling into the session. But now that it's officially kicked off, tell me a little bit about your origin story. I know it started off as Gun Bale, right?
Yes.
Tell me and the audience a little bit about what got you started. How did you gain an interest in starting such a business, and how did you go about it?
Okay, so thank you again. Our first product, as MJ said, was Gun Bale. If you're from Baltimore, you may have heard about it a little bit. So when I was coming up in Baltimore, I too was raised in Baltimore, went to Baltimore City Schools. So I witnessed gun violence coming up at an alarming rate. And once I got older, I went through my own things with gun violence as younger. As I got older, I started to wonder why it seemed as if gun violence only happened in certain communities excessive gun violence. And I came to the conclusion that most of the guns have been proliferated there, and that to stop the gun violence, we had to remove the tools that people are using to do it, the overproliferation of illicitly held guns. So I created a program called Gun Bale that helped offenders value their freedom over their guns. It is a law enforcement diversion program that helps remove guns off the streets.
Well, and so talk a little bit about how that works. I mean, that's amazing, right? I mean, you and I both grew up in Baltimore. Like you said, anybody locally is familiar with the problem, but you decided to do something about it. So how did the app work? How did you operationalize your idea, and what were some of the tactical logistics of that?
Okay, first of all, I do a lot of research, and I read about a program that was run in the early to mid 90s in Baltimore City. That was the last program effective at reducing gun violence in that city with data. But it was some time ago. I read it and I reproduced it digitally. Mm-hmm. So what we came up with was a tool for law enforcement to engage nonviolent offenders and offer them the opportunity to surrender a weapon via our app that would be turned into gun dealers as an intermediary and then picked up by law enforcement, where then that individual, whatever pending charges would be or bail, the individual will be released until final disposition of their cases. We did get some traction there, and then, but we were never adopted in Baltimore. We went to other municipalities, and we were able to gain traction in St. Louis. And that was pretty much it. We still have Gun Bale, and now we have more pending contracts with Gun Bale now because of our success with Homesafe first.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about. So you say you operationalized it by mapping out how the guns travel, and you say you got the
Yeah.
offenders to value their freedom over the gun. So tell me, what does that mean? Who used the app? Who was the customer of the app? And what was the value proposition as you engaged those enterprises?
Well, early on, I realized
Mm-hmm.
that guns are currency on the street market.
Right.
So I figured that the best way to attack the problem of gun violence was to attack the economics of it. At the same time, similarly, most cities that experience high gun violence experience overcrowding jails and other symptoms. So I figured we could kill two birds in one stone. What if we could take the gun off and release the pressure on a jail overcrowding and the money that it costs to the city budget?
Right.
For housing so many nonviolent offenders. And it happened to be happening at the same time that they began the whole bail review push, as far as, having unfair monetary debts for individuals that were in custody. So I figured we could help the individuals in custody and really help the community and law enforcement by removing a gun while giving these individuals a second chance.
Okay.
And I use technology to do it through the app, and it's really a great product. I mean, really.
No, it sounds amazing. So you developed this app, and then you started to go to law enforcement agencies to tell them about the benefits of how, you could solve two problems with one stone, as you said. How was adoption initially?
Excuse me?
How was adoption initially? Like, how was it
Okay,
received?
well,
How was it received?
It was received. They were always blown away. Every police chief, every mayor, in particular, the police departments had never seen anything like this.
Mm-hmm.
But they all thought it would be very effective. So, we talked to a lot of mayors. We did a few pilots, but I found that an interesting thing that I learned later from AWS is with gun bail, the reason why it's catching on now more than then, even though we had a lot of interest, was because we were a little bit ahead of the game. And sometimes when you create a new technology without knowing your customer's full needs at the time,
mm-hmm.
you can build a product that they might want, but it doesn't exactly fit their needs. So gun bail started out as the basic product, and then we built a prosecutor's model. Then we built an immediate release model and things. So gun bail was 4 apps in one.
Wow.
As we went along, and during that process, I learned how to find out what the problem is first, so that I don't have to go into that revision process.
Right.
Simply with an app, when you have to change everything, right? Through that trial and error, we found out, or we realized a better way to approach solving problems for municipalities as a technology company.
So when you say there were 4 apps in one, if I understand you right, you mean there were 4 target enterprises who could benefit from the app, right? So you mentioned prosecutors, police agencies.
Yes, we have a prosecutor model that's a post-arrest model that's running remote bail hearings inside the courtroom. We have a model that's the app that's downloaded on the police officers, the beat officers' devices, so that they can engage an individual and conduct an illegal gun interdiction with the ease of ordering an Uber on site in the field.
No, please go ahead. No, I was going to say, so
it's a field application for officers to conduct illegal gun interdictions with the ease of ordering an Uber or something.
So essentially, you're saying that if a police officer has this app on her phone, she can enable a person that she's engaging with. She enables him or her to give consent to relinquish a weapon. Walk me through that.
Okay, so how it is it allows them to turn almost any encounter with a nonviolent offender into an illegal gun interdiction, but it does it in a slightly different way than a traditional catch them with a gun and arrest them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what we found was that individuals who participate in gun violence, on average, before they ever commit one violent crime with a gun, they are arrested 2 to 5 times for nonviolent crimes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we realized through the data that it was a gradual progression, it seemed, to gun violence from possession of a gun to the violence. So we figured if we could engage that individual or these individuals all over the country before they get to the violent point, right, when they were still being engaged by law enforcement for nonviolent activities.
Right.
If we could build a segue that would allow law enforcement at that point to access the individual and offer them a better opportunity for themselves and both the community, that they would take it. And the response was unanimous. Most individuals would much rather be home free with their families and their kids, thinking about what mistakes they made and thinking about what their future can be if they would surrender. And I don't like really the word surrender, if they would value their freedom over their guns. And that's what.
And now I can understand why that value proposition would resonate with so many law enforcement agencies and prosecutorial offices across the country, which leads me to the next topic that I want to talk about. So as you began to see so much traction and there was a demand for your app and for your services, what led you to understand the value of the cloud? Tell me a little bit about how you were introduced. Well, I mean, I know the story, but tell everybody else about how we were introduced and how AWS Cloud Start, one of our programs for startups, was the catalyst for your scaling, if you will. Because I like to mention AWS, Amazon Web Services, we allow for the democratization of innovation, right? So for the same technologies, whether it's machine learning or artificial intelligence, whether you're a startup or a Fortune 500 company, right, a small county or a federal agency, we sort of democratize access to those innovations. So maybe you could talk a little bit about your experience and how you were able to scale gun bail based on that premise.
Okay. So first I want to give a shout out to the phenomenal Deb Tillett, because I cannot tell this story without, or even my story without Deb. So Deb Tillett, the president of the ETC, who inducted me into Accelerate Baltimore on my second try. The first time I didn't make it, came back 2 years later and made it. And so AWS were looking for, and I don't want to kind of myself, they were looking for standout entrepreneurs, I think, to access this new Cloud Start program that they had that would help entrepreneurs that were underserved access the infrastructure of AWS and, push our missions forward as part of the cloud. To migrate us over to the cloud and teach us how we could use the cloud to access governments, government customers, and communities. So with that said, I met with yourself and Belinda Matingo and Son and Lord Dennis at the ETC. And you guys, asked me what I had. I showed you. You asked me, well, would I be interested in migrating to the cloud and receiving support from AWS with our mission? And funny, I know everybody's going to think I'm crazy. My initial answer was no.
I remember that.
And now I can't believe I was even considering saying that. But you guys showed a lot of heart. You didn't ask me, you saw the technology, but you didn't focus on that. Your team, yourself, the leader of public health, Belinda, the leader of Comstock, was very interested in what my personal problem was, or what our problem was as a company with our customers. Not about how much, how big my technology can get, or how small it is now. Or at that point, if you remember, MJ, or the part that wasn't even developed, the Homesafe app was not developed, right? You didn't care about any of that. You cared about what did I need for help to get where I envision taking this. And so I migrated over to AWS. Now, when we migrated over to AWS, we had Gunbale. Shortly after that, we had a number of other products because of the support that we got from AWS, and not just technically, the business development support, which has been, I would say in my case, maybe 60% of the ratio. The technology, we have that kind of down. We have great engineers, and I built a great team. But it was the solutions architects and the guidance of AWS, in particular, the business development from yourself, Belinda, and the team that supported us, that allowed us to go to the next step.
So I appreciate that. And I see Deb says your check is in the mail to Belinda. Everybody's agreeing that our engagement was mutually beneficial in all aspects, because our goal really was to identify and help to promote and nurture talent such as yourself. But when I think about your story, I kind of think of it like a sandwich, right? We started with the meat. Migrating to AWS was the meat, but I think there was a slice on the front end that you alluded to with the ETC, and then on the back end, there was the city on the cloud. So let's talk about that front end first, right? You mentioned our meeting took place at the ETC. You mentioned Deb was instrumental in getting you to apply and sort of helping you throughout that process. Tell me about the first time you tried to become a member or a participating company within the ETC cohort. You say you didn't make it?
No. So the first time I applied, I did not make it. I was rejected, and I don't hold it against you guys. So, and then I reapplied. The second time that I applied, I did something slightly different. I was living in Texas at the time. I flew to Baltimore Innovation Week in 2016. And I go to a Baltimore Innovation event, and I don't know anybody. So I'm walking around, and I said, hey, I have this startup, and it's really innovative, and we want to help, stop gun violence. And they said, well, you need to talk to Deb Tillett. And I said, who is Deb Tillett? They said, she's very small, and she has silver hair. So I said, okay. So I'm walking around, and I'm tapping everyone who fits the description. And I didn't find Deb. She had already left. But luckily, I connected with her very best friend, who I thought was Deb when I approached her. And she said, no, I'm not. But I will make sure that you talk to her. And through that, and some other people from an accelerator, McKeever Conwell, I asked him about Deb. He said, hey, that's my mentor. I'll introduce you. He took me and introduced me to Deb. And I can tell you that from the day that we met, much like you guys, I've not been separated. I like to call her a kingmaker.
I mean, she has a nose for talent, and she can definitely, or queenmaker, right? She definitely embodies the mission of identifying and promoting startups such as yourself. So your time spent at ETC sounds like was really formative, and that was happening in parallel to the stories that you were telling previously about engaging with law enforcement and prosecutors, attorneys general. Is that right? Okay.
Yes, correct. And so while I was going through that, the ETC, they really supported me, and we had a lot of disappointments. And like I said, again, I didn't realize until I became part of AWS that I was going about it wrong. And you yourself and Belinda were instrumental in teaching me this, that we locate we're customer focused and customer driven. We locate the customer specific problems and needs first, and then we apply via technology what we need to solve that problem just the way the customer needs it. You know, before, I believe that I would decide what they needed, and I would build it and then go tell them, hey, I have something better for you, right? Without knowing their needs. And that was, so I can say that while I was at the ETC going through the throes, many cities, every river this, I was consistently learning. So Ray Lewis told me this. He said, Trevor, receiving information from you sometimes is like drinking out of a fire hose, which is you yourself told me before too, MJ. And when I was at the ETC, I had not met AWS, and I was being coached perfectly, but the learning curve as to not my products. The technology products, they seem to stand on their own. It was building the credibility as a government contractor versus a tech startup. That was our hurdle. And until I became part of CloudStart, I didn't understand the correlation of what I was trying to do to government versus community. So it's two different
so that makes perfect sense. Now let's talk about the other slice of the bread, right? So you sounds like benefited from tremendous experiences at ETC. Then we were introduced, and toward the tail end of your migration, you actually were submitted to be evaluated for what we call City on the Cloud. Now, for those of you who are online and don't know, City on the Cloud is a program within AWS public sector that celebrates partners of all sizes. We identify partners, we identify cities, jurisdictions, municipalities, and we celebrate those who are thinking outside of the box to apply technology to non-traditional approaches to historic level problems. And sounds like, well, I know the ending. I'm going to spoil it, but you guys were submitted, and then you won. You won the City on the Cloud challenge, right? Talk to us a little bit about what that did for you.
To our surprise, now when I applied I was working with the City of St. Louis, so throughout those at the ETC, I had received an innovation grant from the Department of Justice, and that kind of handled our credibility side. And we took that and went to the Circuit Attorney's Office of St. Louis, and they joined us and allowed us to have a base of operations inside the Circuit Attorney's Office to innovate technology that could help solve some of their historic problems in the city of St. Louis. So we were already there, poised. And when the contest came around, I applied. And when we won, it's just something that just really, Belinda, she emailed me and told me she won. And I remember Stacy saying that they were so excited when we won because I didn't expect, I don't know if anyone else expected it. Yeah. It was a surprise. And that really cemented us as far as our credibility. After that, I was going into meetings and saying, hey, they said, well, how good are you guys? How do we know? And I would say, well, we won the AWS City on the Cloud Innovation Award. And it's normally crickets, like, oh, okay. So from there, a funny thing happened. Won the City on the Cloud Award and got all the accolades. And then because of that, I got to meet back with you at another meeting, and we had a conversation. And that evening, you opened my eyes up to something I never thought about. You told me that public safety, the vertical that I was in, is public health and vice versa. So I began to think about that, and it started to resonate.
Yeah, I remember that distinctly. We were on the top floor of the Baltimore World Trade Center. Yeah, and we were talking off to the side, and we were talking about gun violence and a lot of the other things that were plaguing us, and this is before the pandemic, before, a lot of the social calls
Yes.
for social justice in 2020. This was probably, yeah,
In January. It was
January of this
January
year.
the 12th
Wow.
or 13th.
Yeah, and I remember. So
Yeah.
that's a perfect segue. So things were going great. You won the City on the Cloud challenge. You were almost completely migrated into the cloud, which speaks to your scalability and your security of your offering. And then COVID-19, coronavirus hits. Yeah.
So,
Everything came to us.
so it's much
Yeah.
the same for everybody, right? So through the innovation grant that I told you about with the St. Louis Circuit Attorney's Office, we were able to secure a contract with the St. Louis Public Schools. And during that time, our directive was to go into the schools with our Homesafe First that was now completely migrated and had won the City on the Cloud, our Homesafe First public safety application. And we were putting it together. And the day that we were about to launch, they closed down the entire state because of COVID. So our contract that we had fought for 3 years to get to this place, we have the DOJ Innovation Grant, and the schools are taking us. In pilot day, we're rolling out AWS. They connected us with Ring. Ring was supporting us in this endeavor with the schools, and it was just great.
The Ring doorbell,
and
just
then
like the Ring doorbell,
they said,
which was acquired by Amazon.
Yes,
right.
Yes, the Ring doorbell. So, and I'll talk about this later more about AWS. But another thing quickly that I was able to do was access very successful companies that were in the AWS platform for guidance and tutelage. And so, guys, being able to ask someone about things like, well, I want to support the entire country. How do I get a call center to do that, right? And what's the best ways for me to implement that? I got to talk to Ring as a entrepreneur or a company to a company, and they gave us some pointers. And I'm just throwing it out there for later. It's a lot to Amazon Web Services and the programs that they offer to disadvantaged entrepreneurs. And through that, I was able to gain the insight that I could build my own call center exactly like all of the other call centers with the same capability of these big billion-dollar companies right now with my budget and with my team. So we got on with Amazon Connect and we built it into our system. But before that happened, the schools closed and they said, well, could you guys help us just keep track and see if any of our kids get sick while they're out, because we don't know how long it's going to be out. So we said, absolutely. But again, called AWS and said, hey guys, my contract went well, but it's closed. So they want me to help with COVID. Well, through CloudStart, we were able to get a few solutions, AWS solutions architects, which are geniuses. Trust me, guys. We were able to get the solutions architects on there with our team, and we mapped out a COVID-19 solution. AWS's stance, much like ours, was, well, why stop at the school kids that are home? So we built out a triage tool and to help pre-screen people, and we attached it to a call center. But then we had to add doctors for teledocs. And then we realized after we had doctors for teledocs, we were going to have to guide them to all of the sites. And then after we realized that we were guiding them to all of the sites, thousands of people a day around Missouri, we realized that they all weren't getting their results back and that they all weren't satisfied with the service. And from my coaching from AWS, I had already begun the mindset of customer obsession. And because our customers wanted things that weren't being provided by the current state sites and things, we started, deficiencies, and we started to fix them. And each time we built out another part, but this is rolling. So AWS's or my ability to access the AWS marketplace. And trust me, guys, I don't even know what the number is now. At that time, it was like I could access even, it's like 178 different products or something. So we get on with the architecture, and they mapped this out, and through trial and error and our customers' needs, we ended up building an end-to-end platform for COVID-19 and emergency management response.
Okay, so let's pause there, because you touched on so many things. It's amazing. First, you talked about your adaptive ability to pivot. So things were going great with gun bail. You just started to consider that gun violence was not just a matter of public safety, but it was a matter of public health as well. Things were going great. You won the city on the cloud challenge. Yep. COVID hit all of us, and you were able to pivot. And as a result of having already migrated to the cloud, you were able to scale your secure platform to ingest data from a number of other jurisdictions. And then you touched on what I think is amazing, your adoption of the approach to working backwards from a customer's problems, right? Rather than walking in with a hammer and everything looks like a nail, you kind of listened first and walked backwards into the solution. You're like the model, example of how it's done. That's amazing.
Well, I learned that model from AWS. It's simple, but it's very important. It's the most important thing. You cannot support a customer until you know what their actual needs are. And I've come to learn some needs are stated, just the needs that are stated aren't actually the real underlying needs. A lot of times you have to really sit down and listen. First, we all are entrepreneurs because we're fixers, okay? And we want to make things that are effective, and we want to change things. But a lot of times it's centrally based from our own understanding of the situation, our own view. And what AWS taught me is it's not what I think, it's what the customer needs. And once I realized that mindset, I've been closing contracts.
That's amazing. So I want to keep this sequentially to chronological order. So we started in 2016. Sounds like now we're at the spring of this year, 2020, and COVID hit.
Yes. Well,
and so now you're adapting, you're agile. The cloud is allowing you to do all these things in real time, working backwards from the newly identified needs of the customer. So talk to me about how you morphed or evolved what was gun bail into Homesafe first. Talk to me about that application and how you leverage some of the same principles to address some newly created problems that none of us could have foreseen.
Okay. So, like I said, once we met at the World Trade Center, I was already becoming customer-centric, customer-focused.
Yeah.
I got it. And then we talked about the public health, public safety thing. So at that point, I could say that the real catalyst that really what makes us what we've become so quickly today is because we had access. Also, now I'm going to jump back to the technical side of AWS. Right? It was the personal and the business development that became my foundation and gave me the confidence. But beyond that is I realized that because I was a AWS APN and that I was part of you guys' programs, that I had access to all of the products again. So when we were focusing on a customer, we would realize that this needed to be changed, or this needed, like for one time, we needed quickly some software that could help us transfer the data from our sites across multiple devices from the field instantly, right? And in real time. Well, to build that would be just like building a call center, right? I didn't have to because called AWS, the account managers. They got some solutions architects on, and they give us a list of technology, that's AWS technology that can support us as an AWS partner. So what a lot of people don't know is behind that big AWS, it's a whole world and community of entrepreneurs that are supported. And when you get into trouble, you don't necessarily have to figure it all out yourself. You can reach out to the solutions architects, and you can access AWS Marketplace if you have proven yourself and your team to be AWS certified. You continue to create value, and you continue to grow. You move up in tiers, and we moved up to the level where we could reach out and access additional technologies to help move our system through. Right. Our heat mapping, just so many different things that we got from AWS. So that allowed us to move fast and focus on our customer and to deliver the technology that they asked for, that they wanted, real time. For an example, we built the COVID-19 platform on AWS in 3 days.
So, hold, this is good stuff. I want to make sure that we don't skip over some important elements, though. Because I know that once we met, we built this amazing rapport, and we were able to, collaborate in a number of ways. But I can't understate the importance of the two elements in between the startup and the breadth of resources available within AWS. So on the entrepreneur side, a lot of it had to do with your affiliation with the ETC, right? And so AWS partnered with Deb Tillett and the ETC so that in a one-to-many fashion, we could offer that support. And then on our side, you mentioned CloudStart and Belinda Matingo. So she led that CloudStart program. So Belinda and Deb were sort of like the connectors and the conduit to each of the respective sides. So I didn't want to understate that. But then as you, and I'll pause here and say to everyone in the session as well, if you have any questions or comments, please enter them into the chat. We're almost to the part where we're going to open it up and really address your thoughts, your questions. But back to what I was saying to you, Trevor. I want to learn, as you walked me through the application, the workflow for individuals who value their freedom more than the gun. Talk to me a little bit about the value proposition and specifically what you were doing as it relates to COVID-19. So I launched what we call AWS Project Lighthouse, and you were one of our first startups founders that I thought of to be a part of this. So Lighthouse, at rippling societal implications of the pandemic. So we were working with individuals at the state and county levels on testing and tracing and things of that nature. But on the flip side, social implications previously existing were being exacerbated by the pandemic, whether it was challenges with mental health, individuals in recovery struggling with substance use disorders, and how, honestly, disparities in health comes when you think about racial disparities, socioeconomic disparities. Where you live shouldn't determine how long you live, but in many cases it does. And coronavirus these issues were being exacerbated by the pandemic. So AWS Project Lighthouse was founded and established to address those underlying issues. How did you and your newly evolved Homesafe First align with those principles and help states and counties to address COVID-19?
Okay, so I told you guys we built out an end-to-end platform in 3 days. And then because we're on AWS and we have that capability, we were updating it every single day. And again, as we figured out the customer's problems, we just kept growing and we kept solving more problems. Once we became the end-to-end solution, I guess the best way to put it is we were able to grow at that pace to access the customer in a way, right? So a lot of companies just can't open up and say, hey, what's your problem? What you got? We can solve it, right? But because of the foundation we had with Cloud Start, we could, because quickly, Cloud Start, Belinda Montengo and AWS Cloud Start, which is where Deb got us to, is a program that everything that I'm telling you I did was I was able to respect the Cloud Start to shorten the Amazon universe, which is a good way that Matt put it one day, okay? The resources that became available to us were so vast that we probably couldn't navigate them ourselves, right? So we had account managers who I was able to contact in AWS and just really have sessions. And, you know, we've had these sessions too, MJ, where I can bounce around, which really in my noggin, right? And I'm thinking about this, and I wonder if I can get the capability to do this because my customer wants this. And because we had the solutions architects, we were able to answer those problems in a technology way every single time.
So what are the use cases? What are you solving specifically as it relates to COVID, and where are you doing it?
Okay, so it started out in St. Louis. We started with the St. Louis Circuit Attorney's Office with a pre-screening tool and testing. And then the city called back after a couple of days because people were talking about us. And they said, hey, we need you to do the whole city. And so then Ezekiel Elliott and his foundation, they came along and they said that they would sponsor, you know, uninsured if we tested. So we opened up in Ferguson, Missouri first, along with the Circuit Attorney's Office in St. Louis County. And shortly after that, we started to get press about the disproportionate toll that COVID-19 was taking on the African-American community. Like you said, the underlying or existing disparities really showed with COVID. And so not to our own, the media started saying, hey, these guys are accessing the minority community. We started to feed a lot of the data that they were using to understand that it was at one point hitting the African-American community to such an extent that in March and April, the deaths in Missouri and St. Louis, almost 100% of them were African-Americans, and 80% of them were being hospitalized. Noticing that, we focused on those underserved African-American communities, and we're able to provide testing and community services and support for thousands of residents.
Just to double click on that, because I want to make sure everybody gets what you just said. So in a metropolitan area where the population was roughly 45% African American, the deaths, the mortality was 100% African American, and this is back in March of this year.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Please continue.
Yes. And so seeing that, you know, and with AWS's support, we got right on that. So we opened up sites in these communities, because what we found out is that there were testing sites coming up because it was hot, but they were in the counties. They weren't really where minority communities or underserved communities could access this testing freely. And so we set out to fix that. Now that we've built the most awesome end-to-end platform with AWS, we have to implement it, and we have to make sure that it's accessible to those that need it most. So me and my team, we started going into the community and doing just that personally as well, using our technology and our platform to support these communities and make sure that they had COVID-19 testing, and they had access to their medication, and they had water if they were ever and they didn't need it, and they had a ride to get there. So we built, as we went along, still upgrading. We had the end-to-end COVID platform, and we had to add on a community services part because we found with the underserved community, they don't have access to get to these things if once we let them know where they are and they're available, because most of it isn't available in their communities on the outskirts. So it's been times when we connected with local nonprofits and we signed them all up and other agencies. So when we would find someone that needed help and outside of the COVID testing, we would also use our call center via Amazon Connect to forward them to wherever they need it. And in that, I mean, we've literally taken elderly people to get their medication. We do it quite regularly, actually. We work out through our platform and our technology. It's kind of like a civic Uber thing.
So do constituents go to the app store and download your app, and from there they get to go to address the areas of need that are respective to their unique situation? Talk to me about the logistics of how individuals can access the resources that you're providing.
Okay, so we don't do the app stores. Okay, so in the beginning, we're not a health organization, and we thought it would be a problem in the beginning, but actually we found out because of our limited access to the app store, not being the health department designated, became a slight issue, but it was quickly within a day we solved it. Through AWS again, we were able to build our own web app and to distribute that. And what we found that it became more valuable to our customer. Our customers are municipalities, and they'd rather promote their own application that's right label for them to versus app store. And so we found out that our customer, again, municipalities don't really, well, from our experience, they didn't really like just a random download. They wanted to distribute it in certain communities at certain times, and they wanted to do it in a way where it could be tracked more easily internally. So it worked out for us, is what I'm saying is. Since then, we've not put any of them outside of our gun bill and our first Homesafe First public safety in the App Store. All of our public health things are distributed by the municipalities to their community directly, and we found that to be more effective for the community, the municipality.
Wow! So you've walked us all through your entire journey from 2016, when this was not much more than an idea, right? Through your affiliation with the ETC, the AWS Cloud Start program, you became a member of the APN, which is the AWS Partner Network. You won City on the Cloud. You migrated to AWS for security and scalability. You pivoted. You started to embrace the concept of gun safety as a public health issue. COVID-19 hit, you adapted. I'm just sort of recapping here, but your story is truly amazing. I mean, like I told you, this is one of the things that I've been looking forward to doing all week, was to just having a chat with an old friend and helping you to share your story. So let me ask you this. I mean, God willing, COVID-19 won't last forever. So what's on the horizon for Homesafe First? What's next?
Man, well, I'm still grasping all of this. So as amazing as this ride has been, COVID-19 is just one of the products that we have on our platform now. So I have to shout out Hina Raval, who is an AWS solutions architect, who told me one day last year sometime in a conversation that I'm having with some FAA kind of correlated individuals at an AWS event. She said, Trevor, you're thinking Homesafe first, and we understand that. But here at AWS, we think world safe first. And it resonated so deeply with me that and anyone who knows now, our overall umbrella company is called World Safe First. Gun Bill, Homesafe First, Public Safety, and Public Health are all products of World Safe First now. So, and I say that to segue everybody into AWS has grown my company from a product. We were a technology company that addressed gun violence. But as Belinda asked me very in the beginning when I got in the Cloud Start, am I in the automobile business or am I in the transportation business? World Safe First has made me a serialpreneur, and we will be a conglomerate. And what we're doing is we have a new product coming out. We're turning once again. Now we are about to roll out rapid contactless pickup lockers, and they will be installed in the airports, at the gates, the food courts, and then on the concourses. And what our technology will allow you to do now is to order your food or convenience items or anything you need, pay headphones or charger or whatever you need coming to the airport from on the plane or on your way there. We will geo-track you. We use a number of different technologies to tell where you are. Your food will be there hot in time, as long with your items, hot or cold, where you can just scan your Homesafe first card. It's called GoSafe first, and the card. Scan your QR code, and your lock will open up, and only you could get your items securely and safely without contact.
How far out is that?
Well, we should have the prototype of the lockers by Wednesday finished. And this is in the next 45 days. We're on AWS, we move fast. So this is not going to take long. But also, even more importantly, I mentioned earlier the access that CloudStar and now Lighthouse gives me as to shorten the AWS universe. So through there, I was also called with a big, huge airport concession group that would like to turn all of their Hudson News stores that you see in the airports and convenience stores into contactless convenience stores. They said, well, Trevor, we would like to get Amazon Go, because I know Belinda and you, and I'm part of CloudStar and Lighthouse. I was able to be introduced to the Amazon Go team, and we were able to access the Amazon Just Walkout technology, much as we have the Amazon Connect or the Open EMR or the heat map and everything else that we utilize from within the AWS universe. So we're also building our contactless convenience stores in the airports that will feature AWS Just Walkout technology in our own version of the contactless convenience store as well. And we're taking that to brick and mortar as well at one location, brick and mortar in St. Louis, and then 2 locations in the city of Miramar, where we currently have a contract to do their COVID-19 testing.
All right, so I'm keeping an eye on the time, and I'll ask again, if there are any questions you want to get in before the session ends, please put them in the chat. But I've got 2 questions of my own for you. This is one that I posed to Deb's group of entrepreneurs in her session earlier today. What was your single greatest challenge that you had to address and overcome as your business was scaling? What was the one thing, if you had to put a pin on it, what would you say it was?
Was a small startup now. I have like 100+ employees. I can't believe it, and we're still growing. But I was a small startup, and being the infrastructure. I didn't really, because we were so innovative, there was some credibility questions, but when you're the first one in a space, it wasn't as hard. I just did not have the ability to access the personnel or the technology that I needed on my budget, right? Or the know-how, right? Because it's not just accessing it, you have to know how. Solutions architects are invaluable because they have decades of experience, and they could quickly help you discern what you need, what you don't need, and it's all driven by you. So I would say that the biggest hurdle I had was infrastructure, was having the team and the platform and the support to follow things like COVID, to figure out how to fix it and to
Right.
implement it in 3 days, things like that, right? So my biggest hurdle was having access to the technology and or personnel to help me get to the next level, because I had already gotten through my own to a certain place where we were credible and we were
Okay.
being considered
All right, so
a lot. But AWS let us help
so
us
again,
close
we're
those
right at the
deals.
top of the hour. Just got a question in from Henry Mortimer, who says, "Great to see you and celebrating your success with you." He wanted to
Hey,
know
Henry.
if, as you know, what was your biggest concern as an entrepreneur and what kept you up at night. But it sounded like that sort of jived with the one of the challenges. You know, the scaling your infrastructure as you scaled your business. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, well, I had so, as Henry knows himself, I had so many opportunities, but I could never realize those opportunities because I simply did not
Yeah.
have the infrastructure to do it. And it cost, and
All right.
we didn't have it as a startup. It's like the chicken and
Understood.
egg thing,
So hey,
right?
listen, I know we could talk for hours. We do all the time, but unfortunately we're at the top of the hour. I want to be respectful of the next sessions that people will probably start to migrate to. See, I use migrate again. But Trevor, as always, it was a pleasure.
Okay.
This was, like I said, just talking to an old friend. Much success for you to come, I'm sure. And I really appreciate this opportunity to participate in the Baltimore Innovation Week. So thank you, my friend. We'll be talking soon. Yeah, I hope everyone
Thank
enjoys
you.
the rest of
Okay,
your
thank
event.
you.
All right, take care, guys.
Okay.